Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Show on this fantabulous Memorial Day. My name is Lito, and I'm hosting today's show in celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Since I'm not Andy or Patrick, or what you might usually see on a Monday night show, I'd just like to take a couple seconds just to introduce myself, if that's okay. My name's Lito. I'm originally from Orlando, Florida. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. I studied architecture and business, and right after my year abroad in Rome, I worked for Universal Creative on their hotel design team. So I worked on Endless Summer, so Surfside and Dockside, getting those two resorts up and ready for opening, and I've also worked on some things related to Epic Universe. So it's a lot of fun. Andy and Patrick wanted me to throw out and kind of promote our social media before we get started tonight. So feel free to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We also have a new TikTok channel. If anyone's on TikTok, a lot of us waste a lot of time scrolling through different TikToks. We also have a Slack group. So if you're interested in getting involved in the industry, there's a lot of networking opportunities, resume, portfolio reviews, and just a great way to get involved in the entertainment industry. So feel free to check out our Slack channel whenever you get a chance. This week, we'll be discussing production design with our special guest, Rob Tintoc. So let's welcome our special guest this week. Hey there, Rob.
Welcome. Hey, guys. Thank you.
Glad to have you on. Before we get started, we'd love to just have a short description of who you are and what you do in the industry.
Okay. So, I'm Rob Tintoc, and I am a production designer at Universal Studios Hollywood, the entertainment department. And I'm sorry, I think that's that's about it. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So who you are and what you do and how you get started in the industry.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Little nerves. So yes, as I said, I'm a production designer at Universal Studios. And how I got started in the industry, I actually, my background was in theater, and in scenic design. And I actually, I went to UCSD, graduate program to study set design, and part of that program there was a mentorship, and and my mentor was Robert Brill, a Broadway scenic designer who happened to also be working with Disney. He actually did the Frozen musical, but before the Frozen musical, and I think this is general news, that there was a Toy Story musical that was slated for the Hyperion.
I've heard of the Toy Story musical. I've heard of it on the cruise line before.
Yeah, and it didn't quite make it.
Yeah, I've seen the one on the ship, and I can see why I didn't make it to the Hyperion just yet.
Yeah, but I was able to work on that for Mr. Brill. When he was my mentor. So that was kind of like my first inkling into the themed entertainment world, where it was essentially, theater design for theme parks.
Yeah.
So that didn't actually come to pass, but it did, bring me into this world.
Yeah. Put you in the right direction.
It did. So that's, I think, that's essentially how I started. But I've never actually officially worked for Disney.
Got it. Okay. So you're just kind of working through like different the design process, I guess, just kind of observing it from a distance, I guess.
Yeah, just as part of the mentorship, he had brought me in on a multitude of his projects, and that was one of them, and I got to dabble in a little bit, but more or less just learning the trade,
right.
Discovering that there was a world of themed entertainment design. Quite fascinating and interesting. So
yeah, it's interesting to go from the kind of the concrete land of like different set design and theater productions and how that kind of mixes with like different experience design and things like that. So definitely, I didn't make that connection on my end as an architect until I kind of got more involved with people through TETV of how theater and building design work together in the theater entertainment industry. So
absolutely,
cool to meet someone who came from the other side.
Right, and we do need the architects because, unlike theater, where everything is kind of, slapped together and audience can't even interact with it or touch it, in themed entertainment, they can. So we actually need it to be built solidly. So thank you, architects.
Yeah, we design the buildings. You guys make it look fun and pretty and theatrical and magical.
That's right.
What are some challenges you experienced moving through your career?
I'm sure there's plenty of challenges. I will say, I think in general, and I think everybody within this industry kind of learns this right off the bat, of the good, cheap, and fast triangle. And I think that I think that one of those challenges, or that's a constant and consistent challenge throughout the career, and all the projects. But from my personal beliefs, it can't not be good. So it's really just a balance of time versus budget, right? And that's always a thing that you have to kind of tackle along the way. So I think that's always a challenge, and to meet it, you always just have to think about what the project is, and what the guest experience, and how do you serve that best within the time and the budget. So I think within those challenges, just always defer to the story we tell, and how best to communicate that.
Sure, absolutely. Wonderful answer. I hear you have some slides you'd love to show us. If we'd love to pull those up real quick. Wonderful.
Sure.
So if you want to talk a bit on this slide, and I'll probably probe you with some questions. I have a lot of questions about some of the things on the slide.
Yeah, sure. So this is just the first slide. It's a little of an about me page. I have a little bio there, but essentially it's actually probably much well written and explains me more than how I stumbled in the minute of this project, or this video. But essentially, so that just explains how I've been working at Universal Studios for about a decade now, in various aspects. But as I said, my background was in scenic design, and coming into but I did learn all the other design trades within theater. Coming into themed entertainment, you kind of had to learn how to apply all those things together. And so as I've done lots of primarily the live events is a big one. What you see here are a lot of photo ops, or photo opportunities, I think is what op stands for. And some the live shows, and I think yeah, so that's mostly what I see here. There's a little studio tour. There's some seasonal overlays, and also some permanent stuff.
Wonderful. So I see there's a little bit of from animal actors over in California. Excuse me. I've only visited Universal Studios Hollywood one time. I'm from the East Coast, so I'm a big Universal Studios Florida fan. So what's it like designing and working with animals? And I kind of have a question following up with that.
Right. So Animal Actors was definitely a fun project. One of my first projects that so some of these you see are overlays or refurbishments or rehab designs. There's a little bit of Waterworld there. That show has been around for over 20 years. I was not the original designer for that, but I did get to work on it when I first got there. So same thing with Animal Actors, is taking the set and for this one, there's actually a big renovation. It used to be, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it. I think it's a Discovery Channel show. It was.
Was it maybe Animal Planet? Because I think ours was also Animal Planet at one time.
Yeah, that probably makes more sense. It probably matches, but it was an Animal Planet themed show. So it had lots of jungle cutouts and animal cutouts. If that's what Orlando had too, I'm sure it was similar. So when I was brought in, they want to give it a fresh face and convert it to more of that studio backlot quality style. So I had to take this set and essentially convert it from the jungle to a studio theming. So that was pretty fun, and again, it was one of my first projects, and I actually got to go into actual sound studios on the backlot to go and pick and pilfer ideas and visuals from there.
Wonderful. Yeah. And what's it like? Can I ask about Waterworld too? How'd you work on Waterworld?
Waterworld was Waterworld was actually also a lot of fun. Again, it was just a rehab,
right?
Or is rehab the word?
Refurbishment, rehab.
The original look was very nautical theme, but just very dispersed and generic, if you will. And so one of the things that I was tasked to do, which was actually really fun, was create the actual world of the atoll that the set is upon. So each area actually had a little bit more living space, or more story to tell. Again, like like there's an area where people would have like would eat or would do their laundry, where they keep their armaments. The Hydroponics Bay is one of my favorites, is one of the towers, and so we got to put a lot of vegetation and stuff. And it was a little bit more of a story to tell, taking the exact same canvas, but essentially repainting it. Worked with some amazing people, worked with some like the prop dressing team. It was a lot of found nautical objects, but put together so it's not just jumbled in clumps, but hey, let's convert this barrel into a grill.
Organized chaos.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Yeah. I will say Waterworld was probably like the highlight of secret highlight of my trip to Universal Studios Hollywood. We don't have that in Florida. It's super weird because every other Universal park on the planet has one. Orlando never got one. Thought that was kind of weird. So I was like, maybe we should see this show. And I was like, oh my God, that's actually super cool. It's super weird because it's like a movie that not a lot of people have seen anyway. And they have this really cool, like spectacular show that plays a couple times a day. So I thought that was pretty astounding.
It is also a 3-hour movie.
I didn't realize it was 3 hours.
Well, now I might be misquoting that. It's a long movie. And to work on this project, I watched that movie a lot
times.
Yeah. And something that we like to do is to always make sure that our shows and everything is all like consistent. So for a while, I used to watch like Waterworld once a year, like as part of like my gig, to then go onto the set to just make sure it still looks good, it's still not everything's all right. So
that's probably a good idea when you have such a long movie franchise, to make sure that everything makes logical sense. I guess from the same action when it comes to donkeys in the bottom right corner or top bottom right corner, I guess. So how did you come up with putting Donkey? Because I think now he's in like kind of sort of like this ticket booth thing, kind of sitting outside the DreamWorks Theater.
Yes.
Looks like here he was in a wagon at one point. Over in Florida, he's like in some sort of like stall selling things or something. How did you guys come up with that?
So again, this is another one where the cart came before the donkey.
Oh, really? Okay.
We had this existing cart. The donkey cart experience we had was again another thing that existed before my time, and it was another refurb. Actually, like most of the bottom ones are the ones where it was more of like a refurb rehab, going back to the story, and pulling some fun
refresh. Gotcha.
Yeah, refresh. So like added like some extra mud and some splatter, reworked some graphics. Messed around with like it's super small here, so I'm sorry, but there's like our time board, and so we had next to a box that was filled with time, THYME. I know that the creative based upon this and why it was a cart was from the original Shrek movie, where Donkey wanted to have a sleepover, and then the next day they were going to make waffles. So where the cart came before the donkey, and again, this was before my time, but we were like, oh well, let's make it a waffle cart because Donkey wanted to make waffles with Shrek. So kind of bridging that gap.
Yeah, love it. That's a lot of fun. I hear you also worked on Bill and Ted.
I did. That was my very first set design project. And I think so. I will say that I did start working as an assistant prior to, but this is actually my first design. There's the top and the bottom are 2 different years, but these are my very first design at Universal Studios. Was for the Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure, which was part of the Halloween Horror Nights experience. So I always loved this show. It's a pop culture parody show. It's meant to be a little, crass and make fun of everybody.
Edgy. Yeah.
Edgy. But also lots of high energy, very fun, big dance numbers, lots of, lights and spectacle. So this was always fun. Since it's a pop culture parody show, so the 2012 show up top was based off of the Hunger Games
I can see the
IP. Yep, and then the and the one below was based off of the Wizard of Oz. I think this was like based off like I think it was the James Franco one that just came out.
Oh, Oz, Great and Powerful. Yeah, I remember that movie.
From 2013. So, but also if you see on the bottom right, there was a Gatsby scene as well. I think that Gatsby also came out then. So, this was always just a fun show to work on. Also because my background is set design. So
a lot of different sets in that show, I guess.
yes, and a little bit more comfortable. And to our previous conversation, this is a lot of just fun spectacle stuff that the guests don't actually have to interact with. So unlike some other things I've done, this was a little bit safer.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's as someone who kind of is more on the scary side of Halloween Horror Nights. When I go to Halloween Horror Nights, I kind of get like really scared. Chainsaws in my ear kind of scare the crap out of me. I don't know about you guys watching. So Bill and Ted, in the years that I went before they didn't do it anymore, was like the highlight of my night because it was a little more fun, a little more relaxing, and less scary. Jump in your face, kind of scary.
Yeah.
One question I had was, if you might be able to answer this, but that's okay. How did you guys determine what was maybe too edgy for a theme park show? Like, where was that line drawn?
That is definitely a I don't know if I can answer that. Only because we had a great writer, great director, great production staff who worked on all that stuff prior to. So it's not like I really touched a script. And so I don't know how we determine it, but I think I'm sure lots of smart people did work on it.
I'm sure there was a very extensive creative team. They're like, maybe not cross this line. I'll push this button, but this is okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line. I think it's also asking the audience, to come in and just have fun and the Halloween Horror Nights demographic is definitely like a group of people who are just here to to have a good time and enjoy. So yeah.
Wonderful. I also hear you worked on Grinchmas.
I did. So Grinchmas was so I guess in truth, Grinchmas was the first project I worked on, although not my first design. I was an assistant designer to Paul Sessa, who's currently my boss, and has for the last decade, I guess. So it was his project first, and that used to be a show in a space that no longer existed. At Hollywood, at least. So I think in Orlando, you guys have like a little theater show. We had to convert like one of our outdoor spaces. So it was like a seasonal event. And so in 2013 was my first chance at like actually designing the project. We had to convert it from the traditional stage show into more of like an immersive experience where people kind of walked through and gathered, but they can come and go as they please. And we had some shows, so we did have a stage, but it wasn't quite your traditional like cue, sit, enjoy, song and dance number. It was very much more of like a holiday festival. So
got it. Okay.
For the past, I guess, how many years? 6 years or so. This has been an event that we put up and consistently try to make better each year. So we have one of the cooler things, even though the top picture shows like the event spread, if you see the lower left, we actually put up a new tree last year. And I actually got to design this new tree. This was a fun project. So I have there's a little like sketch to rendering, to model, to
that's
to putting it up and then in the space. So that's always a fun thing to do. But again, trying to always enhance things. There's we always have these photo ops. So there's this Max photo op on the top right.
That was another one of my questions about the sort of working with animals. We have a lot of meet and greets over on our side, on our coast. You can meet pretty much all the Who's. They kind of just stroll the streets. They even did this past winter with COVID. And then you had the Grinch that does his meet and greets, which is super fun. We don't have a dog meet and greet in our coast. So how does that work? There's a dog in the show. He kind of makes a little appearance at the end. I think he might be in Animal Actors during the year, but we don't have a dog meet and greet. So what's that?
Right.
How does that work?
Yeah. So, well, because I clearly did not answer that question when you asked about it from Animal Actors.
That's okay.
Apologies.
It'll come up again.
But yeah. So we have a Max. Max is pretty much my favorite thing for Grinchmas every year. This one, he has a cute little scarf, but he's got like little sweaters. I mean, he's adorable. So we work with, as you mentioned, animal actors. Our animal actors show here, and their trainers are also support Grinchmas. Okay. So they bring in Max from the show, which is actually right behind the tree. So it's not too far for the dog to come in. We built a little, so he's got his little dog house, and this dog house we try to pull from the movie. Again, another movie I watch yearly to make sure that all looks great.
Especially when you have a big event like this, just to make sure everything's on track.
Exactly. And so we built him a little station. So he's got a little doghouse up against a little Who hut that he lives in. So Max does his sets. If you can see behind him, he actually comes in through the doghouse to do his sets, as with any normal, featured characters. And then at the end of the shift, Max goes back into the doghouse. They're great. I think one of the funniest things is that there's a little bit more of the trainers, I at least to help them and support them, I have to build a little bit more of a cove for Max, just because he's super interested in everything. And when
he meets a new guest every couple of minutes.
Exactly. And because it's an open situation, like he can see the guest, but then he can see all the other things.
Oh, sure.
He's also every now and then, a little surprised by the Grinch, because he could, because the Grinch is also around. So there's always that fun aspect of trying to make sure that that Max gets to this photo op. Max and working with all the animals, like they get the experience with the current guests, because there's a lot of distractions.
Sure. Okay.
So that's one of the things too that you have to kind of think about when designing for the animals. And the sake. It was actually different with the animal actor show, when the whole show is about the animals.
Okay.
Right, versus this. But both scenarios, you kind of want to make sure that like the setting provides as much space for the animal to kind of be the star, and for the guests to have that experience with the star.
Got it. Wonderful. Yeah. I've met the Grinch a lot of times. I've never been to Hollywood for Christmas, so I got to make it out there once they bring it back or hopefully next Christmas, maybe if not the year after.
Absolutely. And if you ever make it out, you've got to meet Max.
Yeah. Love meeting the Grinch. I'm sure meeting Max would be a lot of fun too. I had another question kind of involving how do you guys kind of set up for Grinchmas? So over on the East Coast, Seuss Landing is pretty much there every day. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but a lot of it is pretty much set in stone. Like there's already a lot of Whoville-ish sets to kind of go off of. So what sorts of like set design that you have to work on now that the Whoville set is kind of not there anymore?
Well, so actually that's a two-parter first. The Whoville set was actually in the back lot and part of the studio
part of the tour, right? Yeah.
So whenever we did Grinchmas with the Whoville, like the Whoville set also gets decorated, and it's a song and dance. The tram drives up and stops, and there's about a 5-minute song and dance number with the Who's in the world, and that's fun because we really got to work with the actual set pieces from the movie. Rip, because it's gone. But so that was the Whoville experience, which was always kind of in tandem with our Grinchmas offering. So for this project, we what you see there, which you can't really quite tell, is this project lives in the Universal Plaza. So in Hollywood, when you come in at the center of the park, there's a very large area, our plaza, which is
okay. I kind of see the trellis on the corner. Okay, I see
exactly. So fun fact: I was the first designer to get to put something into the Universal Plaza.
Wow!
And it was Christmas. How do we do it? We basically I think we have to barricade it and close it down for a month, I want to say.
Okay, gotcha.
It comes, Grinchmas comes on the heels of
Like
Halloween.
Halloween, right? There's probably a little bit of transition time there, right?
Yeah, so we essentially close it off because Halloween also occupies that space for
Right.
those fun things that they do. So once the event closes, the space closes down, and we actually just keep it closed and bring in our fun stuff. So, that's a full team of amazing people who put all this up together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's super interesting to know that kind of in this part of Southern California, you have one person who steals Christmas, and then up down the street over at Disneyland, someone else steals Christmas. So that's super cool. That these super interesting, kind of Grinch-esque characters kind of in these spaces. When Max smiles in your photo, it makes your heart. Just in the photo, it looks like he's already making my heart grow, just like right now, just in that photo. So I can imagine when you meet him, it's definitely that heartwarming touch. So yeah, I love Grinchmas. I love it every year. I love meeting the Grinch, and as the years have gone on over on the East Coast, where the Grinch is has had to move a couple times because of how popular he is and how kind of he draws a lot of visitors and how he meets guests. Has that have affected you guys over on the West Coast?
Absolutely. We talk about it every year and how best we can do it, but the truth is, it's so hard. I mean, he's such a great character. Everyone wants to meet him, and so what essentially moves a lot is the queue and the queue experience and how big we want to make it. There were a couple years we tried actually activating the queue where we would allow guests to walk through a tree lot. And so we used to have this area called Trim Up the Tree Lot, and so it used to just be an open space on the other side of the plaza where guests could go in and they could decorate their own ornaments and hang it up. And we thought, why don't we combine that together? And it became the queue. I think for the past couple years, we put the Hoobalicious Treats, which was like the food cart, within the queue. So it's got, you can access the food while you're waiting, because as much as it was fun, when you're waiting for an hour, you don't want to keep decorating trees for an hour. So the food seemed like people were a lot more happier when they could get some food while they were in line.
Yeah.
So it was always that situation. The Grinch being such a great character, it's always a challenge to get that photo op, to be experienced by everybody. And I think that I have a question for you. You love meeting the Grinch. Have you ever given him an onion?
I've never given him an onion. I've asked. I don't. What happens if you give him an onion?
Oh, you're gonna have to figure out that for yourself next year.
Right, next year I'll have to give him to. We have 10 months out of the year the Grinch meets in a kind of in his fur form, so he doesn't really do a lot of interacting that way. So I've seen him a lot in fur form, but usually my once a year Christmas card photo is when he kind of comes out as he appears in the film. So this Christmas I'll have to give him one. I never really thought of that. I guess I'll have to try that. Wonderful. So we have October, Universal Plaza. It kind of has that Halloween atmosphere. November, December, it has the Grinchmas atmosphere. So in January and February, it looks like we go from there to Lunar New Year. Is that what comes next in the plaza?
Correct. Yes.
Wonderful.
So yeah, Lunar New Year. Lunar New Year comes right after, or the event comes right after Grinchmas. So similar to what I explained of like how Halloween closes and then we keep it closed and then Grinchmas comes about. Same thing. Grinchmas closes, and then when it opens back up, it's now Lunar New Year. So Lunar New Year, and since in honor of AAPI month, is actually it's one of my like nearest and dearest to my heart projects. This project in particular came, I think the first year of the horse was 2014. And see, I was trying to be cute and smart, and instead of giving you numbers, and then, but in the year of the horse was the first year we decided to celebrate the Lunar New Year experience at Universal Studios Hollywood. It was such a great idea, and I was honored to be part of that inaugural team to bring it to life. And it actually, what you see here is what it's turned into, but the first few years, it was actually a much more traditional look. We didn't have the Kung Fu Panda IP that attached to it.
Gotcha.
So So it was actually a more traditional experience, and I, as a as an Asian American and a Pacific Islander, I was able to share my culture with
Oh,
all
wow.
our guests, and that was so great to be. And I wasn't the only one of the team who
Right.
got to do that, but it was so great to be able to do that. So we brought in like food and which is a big part of the holiday. We bring in food. We brought in what we like to do is like traditional uh, shows. So like if you see the bottom left, there's the lion dancers. We bring them in. They've been here like the whole time, and they perform. So you kind of get a little bit of our, like that culture. On the top right was something that I actually was one of the ideas that I was able to bring in when I was traveling and I was visiting my family abroad. And I saw that they had these wishing trees that they put up for Chinese New Year, and it was people putting up their wishes and what hopes and goals for the year, and they hang it up on a tree. And we brought it in here, and it was such a big hit. Everyone loved to do it. And so again, there's all these different things that were part of this culture that I really enjoyed. And then probably like one of the best moments of my career, I would say, was being able to take that idea, but then implement a themed experience on top of it. And things just were able to align. We were able to bring in, I think at this point, I want to say in 2016, was when DreamWorks was came into the NBC Universal family, and so at the end of 2016, so the top of 2017, there was all this conversations about it. We weren't able to essentially get to it till 2018, but in 2018 we were able to bring this about, and it was so much fun to integrate the world of Kung Fu Panda, which is set in an animated China,
Imagine China,
imagine China, but very much part of that that world and that festivities. And just bringing it to life. And this was definitely a group effort, and the team that brought us together was it was so much fun. But one of the things that I remembered was I co-designed this with a dear friend of mine and another production designer at Universal, Matt, and him and I were just talking, and we just started listing all the things, like what would we love to do and how would we want to integrate all this together, and we were able to bring this into life. So there was some little things here and there that we were able to latch onto, that we felt really strongly about. The biggest one was Mr. Ping.
So I'm a big character meet and greet guy, as I've mentioned a couple of times. Can you really order noodles from him?
You can absolutely walk up to him and order your noodles, and he will gladly tell you to order your noodles in the next window.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So it's actually the same structure, but two different windows. So there was the photo op meet and greet queue, and then Mr. Ping has all his employees at the next window who are able to serve you.
Kind of the evolution of the donkey's waffle cart.
Absolutely. And this was actually a really fun one. Mr. Ping was such a great puppet to work with. We worked with some of the great people at the Jim Henson Company.
Oh, okay.
To produce him. Some of the other characters that we had as well as our Poe and our Tigress.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can see it in any of these pictures. Perhaps in the lower center where there's a little pig donut.
I
see like a little banner behind the pig. So that was, and actually, I guess in the top center, you could around the canopy of lanterns, you can see all the little banners.
Okay.
So the carryover from it was a traditional experience. We had we actually we heard this create these custom animals that we would feature for the holiday. So it was the 12 zodiac animals for the holiday, and then when we were creating it for Chinese for the Kung Fu Panda Lunar New Year.
Looks like we might be frozen. See if we can get him back in the show. Or maybe I'm frozen. Am I frozen? Yeah, I think we lost Rob's audio. Well, that's okay. Wonderful. You guys can hear me. Great. Well, Lunar New Year is a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I've never got to experience it over on at Universal Studios Hollywood. I wish we'd bring it over to Orlando one day. I think Epcot's China Pavilion would be a perfect site for kind of Disney's celebration of Lunar New Year. But California has a lot of a long history of Asian American culture kind of in the area, so it makes perfect sense to have those celebrations in those two parks. But I was able to attend the celebration in California Adventure last year and meet the Three Little Pigs kind of in their Lunar New Year garb. That was a lot of fun. A lot of different snacks. Yeah, let's see if we can get Rob back. I had a lot more questions. I kind of wanted to also ask about the Megatron. Apparently, Megatron speaks Mandarin, I believe, during the Lunar New Year celebrations. So I'm kind of curious how we came up with that. I've met Darth Vader over in Shanghai Disneyland, and he spoke Mandarin to me there. So that was maybe a similar experience, but different for Lunar New Year. It was kind of a lot of fun, a lot, very intimidating, but it was a lot of fun to meet him over there. But yeah, I don't know. I also wanted to know if some of these Lunar New Year experiences have kind of influenced the Kung Fu Panda themed land going over at Universal Studios Beijing. I've been following a lot of the updates related to the Beijing project, and it looks like a lot of fun. There's a lot of different areas of the park, and I guess the most mysterious area is the Kung Fu Panda area because there isn't a Kung Fu Panda like kind of attraction that's permanent anywhere else in the world. There's a Transformers ride, there's Jurassic World, there's all these other things, but we haven't really seen Kung Fu Panda built fully yet. I guess there's the 3D movie over in Hollywood, which was a lot of fun too. But yeah, hopefully we can get Rob back on to kind of discuss more about this Lunar New Year stuff. But I loved getting to know Poe. He kind of joined us over on the East Coast, over in Islands of Adventure. I want to say around when he was around 2017. I want to say a lot of fun to meet Kung Fu Panda over in the port of entry area. I think he's moved a couple times, but we didn't get Tigress on the East Coast until I want to say this past summer, maybe in the winter. I want to say because I hadn't seen Tigress around, but she was over in the Lost Continent section for a bit, and now she's over at the DreamWorks experience that just recently opened over at Universal Studios Florida, which was a lot of fun to meet her. I actually haven't seen a lot of the Kung Fu Panda franchise. I think I've seen the first one, but I haven't seen the second or the third one. But the 3D movie in Hollywood was a lot of fun, so I know a lot about that. But yeah, hopefully Rock can get back. Maybe I can ask him some more questions about Lunar New Year and some other things. Like I mentioned earlier, it was really great to experience sort of this foothold of Asian culture. Is there a question in the audience? I might have missed it. You pull that back up again. Perfect. Looks like the question is, Grinchmas is so amazing. These projects. Oh, that is a good question. Yeah. I'm also curious to know how the IP's changed over time with Grinchmas specifically, because I want to say in 2018, maybe 2019, there's a new Grinch film. And I wonder if that kind of has changed how we think about using the Grinch IP. I've seen that over in Universal Studios Japan, they've used some of the concepts from the newer film. I think there's a walk around Baby Grinch character that comes out at Christmas time over in Japan. So I wonder how that sort of changed. But yeah, that's a good question. How we go from Halloween, which might be American Horror Story or things of that nature, and then we go from Grinchmas, which is a little more upbeat than what you'd expect at Halloween Horror Nights. Definitely not the Holly Jolly Christmas atmosphere, but definitely more upbeat than Halloween Horror Nights. And then we go from there to Lunar New Year, which is a celebration of culture, and nowadays is an infusion of IP to kind of reinforce and kind of invigorate that culture a little bit more. So that's an interesting point of how we integrate those two things there. But the Universal Plaza looks like it's used a lot throughout the year, a lot of different celebrations throughout the year. I don't know if we have a space like that over in Florida where we kind of just have constant celebrations. I guess this was our first year kind of doing a food festival over on the East Coast. We usually have Mardi Gras over at Universal Studios in Florida, which traditionally was more of a parade and maybe some food booths over in the New York area. This year, because there was no parade, it was kind of a celebration of different carnival traditions. So we had things like Carnival over in Brazil. There was some German celebrations. They kind of celebrated kind of like a mini Epcot food and wine festival, which is a lot of fun. And then there's some of the food kind of exists even after Mardi Gras ended because it was so popular. I want to try it next time I'm over there because I missed Mardi Gras. I was doing thesis, so I wasn't able to go to Mardi Gras this year. But if anyone has any more questions for Rob, go on and type them in the comments down below. And then if we can get Rob back, I'll definitely address those as we move forward, if we can get him back. But yeah, love to hear your questions for Rob as well. See if we can get him back in here. It's sad that we missed out on this year's Lunar New Year. I was able to attend the last Lunar New Year celebration over at Disneyland, but unfortunately, they didn't have one this year. But it's exciting that they're now back open for guests. They're called. What are they called over in California? If I might ask, I've never been to the. They're called mazes, I guess, in California, and they're called houses over in Florida. That's interesting, huh? Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what the change is. I don't want to say that ours are greater or anything or larger to kind of institute that change because I've never been to your event and you guys have a lot of experienced Hollywood talent out there. So I don't know how big or small those houses are, but there we go. Welcome back.
Hello.
Good to see you.
I am sorry about that. I had no idea.
No worries. We had a question actually, if you can pull that back up, CJ, about how the Universal Plaza kind of transitions a lot of IPs quickly. So how does that sort of work? If you can kind of see the question on the bottom.
All right. So yes. Okay. So yes, jumping from IP to IP. I mean, I think that's just the nature of any design challenges or any designer who has to work on multiple projects and the challenge of I guess compartmentalizing to make sure that you're focused on that one project, and giving it your best shot. But at the same time, it's also great that, if you're working on multiple projects, some things that occur, some issues, that you solve from one thing, you can actually carry over, and solve again. I think that jumping from IP to IP, it's just kind of part of the business. So it is how it is. As I mentioned, most of these projects for Lunar New Year and for Grinchmas, as you've just seen, are recurring projects. So kind of establishing that IP and how I've mentioned watching those, rewatching movies every year. It's kind of just getting back into the mindset of it, but we already kind of have the base because we're remounting these projects and then
building off of what happened before.
Exactly. And just, and drawing the learnings from past years and where we want to enhance or adjust or change or try something new. So I guess in truth, it is, these projects do overlap all the time. It's a time management issue, but it's also, I think, like a creative management issue. You gotta be able to focus and, be able to serve the project and serve the story as best you can.
Wonderful. Do we have? I had a question also about Lunar New Year before we move on. I hear that Megatron speaks Mandarin during the event. Did I get that correct?
That is true. We have.
How did you guys come up with that sort of experience?
Well, our Mandarin-speaking Megatron actually has. It was part of the initial project of bringing Lunar New Year into Universal Studios Hollywood. As much as we wanted to celebrate the culture and experiences and provide our guests with as much authentic things that we can do to to celebrate the holiday, and teach guests who aren't familiar with Lunar New Year, like what it's all about. There was also this one thing that we all ask ourselves all the time when we work on projects at Universal is how do we make it unique to Universal? We always want to think about like our guest experience and how do we make our guests know that they're experiencing something that they can only get from Universal. Right. So with that kind of caveat of unique to Universal and how our Mandarin-speaking Megatron came about was in our initial years of this project, we were as we were populating the event with the traditional, we also wanted to throw in some things that are unique to Universal. So
that's pretty unique.
Yeah. The Lunar New Year experience has plenty of characters. I think the Plaza celebrates the Kung Fu Panda experience. So we also have minions. I think for a Year of the Monkey, we had our Curious George in a cute outfit. So
that's cool. Yeah, it's super cool to watch how that experience has kind of changed over time. I've been fortunate enough to meet Darth Vader and Kylo Ren over at Shanghai Disneyland. So similar, but not quite the same thing. They were speaking Mandarin. It was a lot of fun. Have fun with that. How like what I experienced as American culture kind of in China. That was a lot of fun. But it was last question before we kind of move to the next slide. Do you think any of these, any of the work that you've done since Kung Fu Panda has been influencing the event? Do you think any of that has maybe affected or kind of influenced what's going on over at Universal Studios Beijing? And you might not be able to answer that question, and that's okay.
Yes, I am unable to answer that question.
Okay, then we can move on to the next slide. It looks like that you guys might have had a summer event over in 2017 in the same plaza as well. If you want to talk about this too.
Yes, so this is so again, I think I was talking about how we just acquired our new partners with DreamWorks. So to celebrate the vast library of characters that they offer, we wanted to kind of create this little experience for our guests. And I think for this project, one of the things that we were trying to do is to kind of like bring the scene, like, bring the guests into the scene, or a step into a scene type of experience. So I was fortunate enough to kind of work with all of their different properties. So back to that question about mixing IPs, this project had an umbrella IPs. Yes, of multiple different looks, and trying to stick to them. Working with partners at DreamWorks, they were so great, and helping us kind of like reproduce the what they did in film and on screen into real life. So yeah, there's the Madagascar and How to Train Your Dragons, Kung Fu Panda, Shrek, and Trolls IPs were the ones we featured here. Yeah, and the a fun fact, the backdrops of all of these were actually hand painted.
Oh wow, that's super fun.
Yeah, we were kind of going back and forth with like how do we do the best world, create this best world, and I think the hand painted look kind of gives it that like animated feel, but in reality, it actually turned out really well for us.
Yeah, the event looks like a lot of fun. So it looks like it was a bunch of meet and greets. Were there any other sort of kind of attributes to this event?
If you see above, so during the day it was a lot of meet and greets, and then it kind of converts into a little dance party.
Okay.
Where we had our fun like lights. They're like LED changing lights. On the top left, you can kind of see some of the string lights up there, and we just had a great time. And it was a lot of like fun music. A lot of it pulled from these properties. So that was also really kind of awesome to work with.
Right. Yeah. It looks like since the DreamWorks Theater sort of opened kind of nearby, there's a lot of influence on this kind of in that area. Was that sort of influenced by this event?
I yes and no. So the DreamWorks Theater used to be the Shrek,
Right.
the Shrek the show. So it was and since it was a DreamWorks property, it was across from the theater. So so yes, it was. In part of that, we were trying to leverage the fact that there's a DreamWorks attraction across the way, and so that people can kind of like, if you will, exit through the gift shop into the plaza to kind of experience the myriad of IPs and characters that that DreamWorks could offer. So
wonderful. Yeah, I know that there's now around that area. There's the Donkey Meet and Greets now just outside there. I think I met Poppy and Branch in that same area too, and maybe Poe as well in that same area. Back in 2018 after this event sort of ended.
Yeah, so yes, I think we try to pull all of our DreamWorks characters, around in and around the DreamWorks Theater.
Yeah, wonderful. They've been a great addition to the Universal Park since they've been introduced. I remember when I opened Surfside, there was a kind of a private opening event with all the team members that were on the opening team and some of the design team, and they brought Poppy, Branch, and Guy Diamond into the lobby to kind of have a dance party. And Guy Diamond farted on the floor, and we had to clean it up. It was a mess. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun bringing them in there.
For the viewers who don't know, when Guy Diamond farts, he farts glitter.
Yeah, it's a fun fart.
Yeah, we do have that that themed experience as well here in Hollywood.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun meet and greet. Once, one of my favorites is, you don't really see that, and I see a lot of characters everywhere. Haven't seen that before, so that was super fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it looks we have one last slide to wrap things up. If you'd like to talk about anything on this slide.
Sure. This was just I was just having a little fun with my thank you slide, and I tossed in some photos of me within all of the things that I was able to design, and some of the fun people I got to work with as well. Actually, something that's in here that at that bottom center one and maybe the top left. So those were some photo ops that I designed for the RIP tour from the Halloween Horror Nights experience in 2019, celebrating the Netflix Stranger Things property.
Okay, yeah, it looks like you guys have a lot of fun with that IP.
Yeah. I think all the other things there we kind of touched on as well. But yeah, so that was actually fun to do. We kind of recreated a Scoops Ahoy photo op. That was actually a fun one when we produced the photo op and the guests were allowed to like walk behind a counter to be part of it.
Right.
And the I don't know, the people who come to approve things came by to approve it. All the bosses, they like came in to and then they were asking like, wait, how does this work? And like where's the guest going to line up and who's going to serve this? And they thought that we actually built like an actual
an actual restaurant.
Yeah, a practical counter.
No, you take a picture here.
Yeah. And there was like, is this, is this all like food? Has food is it all like approved and sanitary? And we're like, we're not serving any food here.
Yeah, it's all props. It's all just photos. That's funny.
Exactly. But our props team did such a great job throwing all that together. So it looks so real.
Yeah. It looks like we have a question from Elements of Imagination asking what your favorite project has been so far.
I always like to answer this question as my next project. I think I love all the things that I get to work on. It's such a honor and pleasure to work with all these different properties. And honestly, like I'm always excited to do what's next, and I want to do new and fun things. It's great to be able to touch on all these projects, especially like the ones that we kind of featured today, which were like these like yearly annual, projects that we kind of like always make better as we can. But I'm always excited to do the next big thing.
Yeah. I guess kind of follows up into that. Where do you see the next step of your career going?
I actually, so being a production designer at Universal is actually, it's really great. And I think with almost everywhere and all, in the industry, there's always that sense of like wearing multiple hats or doing a little bit more than you do. I as a production designer, I was fortunate enough to be in part of some of the more creative conversations on like what, instead of like, hey, we're going to design this project, how do you see that happening? It was more like, what project should we work on next? Conversations, and I would love to see myself in that, to be able to go towards that capacity. So more of like, I guess, a creative director role would probably be what it translates to. I just would like to be more involved, or part of the room of, coming up with like, hey, what else can we do? What else would be great? What cool new thing can we do to offer our guests?
Wonderful. Good answer. I love it. And I guess the last thing I'd like to end on is any final thoughts for the audience?
Thank you for joining. For anyone who's joined, I hope my ramblings were fun. Apologies for the lost connection.
No worries. I was good at stalling until you came back.
Just vamp. Just keep vamping.
Yeah.
So no, I guess thank you guys for joining. I'd happy to answer any more questions if there are any. Hope everyone has a good Memorial Day. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, do you have anything to plug before we kind of close the show this evening?
Hey, come to Universal Studios Hollywood. Come back to the theme parks. We'd love to have you. Working on some fun new things. I get to, I don't know how much I can talk about, but I definitely want you guys to come and check it all out. I think our Halloween Horror Nights, and our Grinchmas and all of the fun stuff that we were, unfortunate that we had to miss or skip a year. We want to bring it all back for you guys, so please come in.
Yeah, let's see. We got one final question. If you want to pull it up for me. Thanks so much. What's your favorite personal property to draw?
Oh, my favorite personal property to draw. That's a tough one. I, as much as I and work at Universal Studios Hollywood, I am a huge Disney fan. So I actually love Disney characters, and I think, mostly Disney characters. I love drawing fun stuff. I'm such a big Disneyland fan, theme park fan, but also the property fan. So probably going to doodle some Dalmatians because Cruella just came out.
Ooh, I haven't seen it yet, so no spoilers just yet. I want to see it.
Either, but
okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Glad we're on the same page. Yeah. I've doodled a couple Pixar characters on like all of my sketchbooks. I have like Woody on a corner and like Buzz, and like this was right before this like the summer over at Disneyland when they did the Pixar characters. Mm-hmm. So ready for it by just sketching a bunch of like different Pixar characters on my stuff. Nice. Anyway, hopefully we can all make it over to Universal Studios Hollywood soon. I'd love to see that new Pets character meet and greet real soon. That looked like a lot of fun in the YouTube clips. I'd love to see the ride too. It looks like a blast as well.
It's a super cute ride.
Yeah, I can't wait to ride it. I'm a big fan of dark rides because I get a little motion sickness. I know I talked about how much I loved Velocicoaster. Smaller dark rides are my favorite because I don't get dizzy. But thanks so much for coming on this evening. We loved having you. Today is March 31st, or May 31st, excuse me. So it's the last day of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. But tomorrow, when the clock strikes 12, we'll be flipping over to Pride Month. I think that runs for the month of June. So TETV will be doing a lot of content that we're working on to celebrate Pride Month. We'd love to have you follow all of our social media channels. So once again, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's also a TikTok and a Slack group. We'll be kind of promoting all those Pride Month events as the days kind of move forward. And yeah, we hope you had a magical night this evening and have a great rest of your Memorial Day.